Hi, my name's Ian Dennison. I work at GF Strong Rehab Centre in Vancouver, Canada, and I'm here to tell you about tools and fasteners that you might come across with wheelchairs. There's a very comprehensive explanation of all these things on our website, iwheel.ca. That's iwheel.ca, not .com. So not too long ago, you were able to get away with very, very few tools to adjust wheelchairs. 7/16 wrench, half-inch wrench, 3/4 inch wrench, and if you're really adventurous, a 1 1/8 inch wrench. Phillips screwdriver, and you're pretty well set. Unfortunately, or fortunately in some ways, the wheelchairs have got more complex, and with the advent of European designs coming into North America, there's quite a few chairs that have nuts and bolts that are metric, and also on the same chairs different components are held on with Imperial size nuts and bolts. So it's not enough just to be able to have a little bag of tools. You really have to have a full set of tools to be able to attack every fastener. But these are the most commonly used tools that you may need for maintaining a wheelchair. So we have wrenches, and oddly enough, you often need two of the same size. For instance, if you're taking off a caster wheel, you've got to have the same size nut on each side, or the same size Allen bolts holding on the caster, so you need two of the same size of device. But you can get away with a socket and a wrench if you need to be able to undo two sides of a item. With the wrench, I recommend Boxend wrenches, kind of a combination open end and box end. When you put this on a nut, you don't have to slide it off. You can just put it on and it stays in place. This way, with this end, you're able to, if I have a appropriate size. Would you believe it, they're all metric? Here we go. So if I have a half-inch nut and a half-inch wrench, turning in a confined space, say I can only go from there to there, and I can't get my next flat spot, I can only go, this is the only range I have. If I turn the wrench over, I can get a bit more here, and then turn it over and get to this part. Right? See how I'm able to achieve what I'm trying to do with very little range because of the offset nature of the head. With this, it's kind of nice because I can just go round and round, it's not going to fall off. If I'm doing it this way, oftentimes the wrench will fall off and you have to re-put it on and it just keeps slipping off. So it's nice to have those. A ratcheting wrench allows you to keep it in place, and you can actually go back and forth in a small range if the ratchet's fine enough, and you can take it off as well. Let's put it on just by moving this little lever. We only recommend using these if you don't have anything else to open the fastener, because they tend not to fit anything. I know they're supposed to fit everything, but they don't really fit anything. So when you're using one of these, tighten it up as much as you can, and then try and turn towards the cast end rather than towards the sliding end. So with this way, I would turn towards the cast end. If I need to tighten it up, put it on, make sure it's tight, and turn towards the cast end. That makes the jaws tighten up as you're applying it, rather than puts force on the mechanism that holds the jaws in place. Extension bars may be necessary to make your socket longer so you can reach a little bit further. You can get different length extension bars. One of my favourite tools from the past is a speed wrench. This allows you to take off a nut that's sitting on a nut that's sitting on a bolt that's got a really long thread. So if that's all the way along here, especially if it's a nylon nut or other kind of locking device, you're able to use this very quickly. It's next best thing to a electric screwdriver or drill. Alright, so that takes care of the wrenches, box end combination wrenches and sockets. Now an interesting thing, if you do want to minimise your toolkit, is that there are some sizes of metric and imperial that overlap. The most common sizes, which is fortunate for us, 7/16 wrench and socket is the same as an 11mm wrench and socket. 1/2 inch is the same as a 13mm wrench and socket. 3/4 inch wrench, same size as a 19mm. So those are a few shortcuts you can make in making your toolkit relatively transportable. Allen keys are quite commonly used in wheelchairs and seating, and there are a number of different packaging systems and handling systems that you can purchase. This is kind of like a Swiss Army knife version of the Allen key. It has multiple keys that you can have in one handy package, so you never lose your keys. You find the appropriate one. There we go. Make sure it fits really snugly. This one does. Before you try and open it, this one doesn't fit at all. This is a Imperial set. If I use my metric Allen keys, I could find one that's really close, and that one doesn't fit. Too big. And I just happened to find a size that didn't quite. It was either did work or didn't work, so you couldn't do any damage. There are some sizes that the Imperial almost fits, the metric fits perfectly, and if you use the wrong one, you can turn this hexagon into a circle, and it's very difficult to open something that doesn't have an edge on to grip with. So there are a number of different versions. Let's say you got the right size Allen key, you can have the Swiss Army knife version. It's a bit of a pain, to be honest with you, because you have this bulky handle that gives you the leverage, but you're always kind of fighting, and the other keys come out. So if you're going to be working on a lot of wheelchairs or working on your wheelchair regularly, I would recommend that you get T-handles for the size of fastener that you're going to be using. These fit in and you got leverage. They're so easy to use compared to Swiss Army knife, but you need to have one of each size. But if it's your own wheelchair, you may only have 2 or 3 different size fasteners anyway, so it's worth investing in that. This is the other style of Allen key that is commonly available. You buy them in a set. What's nice about these is that they're quite versatile. If you put the short end in, you have a long lever that allows you to open a stubborn fastener. When you put the short end in, you can quickly spin it out, so it gives you the versatility of leverage or speed. They are a bit hard on the hands, especially the smaller sizes, so I'd recommend finding something like this. I don't know if you can, I'm sure you can buy them, but not necessarily dedicated for that purpose. This is just a tube. You slide it onto the Allen key and it gives you a softer handle for your hand, or it gives you extra leverage. If you don't have one of these and you need extra leverage, you can kind of get your wrench to do double purpose, especially, well, obviously the box end. You put the box end wrench on, and then you can use that to increase the leverage that you have on your Allen key. Another variation on an Allen key is the ball end Allen key. This one's got a rounded end on it, and it allows you to go in at an angle. So I can still undo that fastener from here or from here. Right? The downside is the neck of the ball is a little bit weak, and if you're using a lot of power, you can break those balls off. If that happens, just grind off the end so it's flush, finish it off, and then you've got just a regular Allen key. Those are Allen keys. Screwdrivers. Again, just like an Allen key, it's kind of nice if you have a dedicated screwdriver for each end that you have on the screwdriver. These are good, they're versatile, you've got a bit for everything. These are nice because they just feel better in your hand and they're not as clunky, not as wiggly. They're just firm. So if you can get appropriate screwdrivers for whichever fasteners you've got, you'd probably be happier, but this will do in a pinch. One of the things I want to point out here, and you're going to have to zoom in a lot for this, is the difference between a Phillips bit and a posi drive bit. These two bits look like they fit the same screw, right? They're both got, these are the screws that they fit. Now if you look closely at these bits, you'll see that this is pointier than this one. The Phillips is pointier than the posi drive. So if you try to put the Phillips in the posi drive screw, it kind of fits, but it kind of doesn't. It doesn't. The point hits the end before the walls are up against. Whereas this one, there's no play at all. Right? So this is the Phillips on the Phillips. A little bit of play, but not much. Phillips on the posi drive is a problem because the posi drive, are you zoomed in really high on, tight on this? The posi drive has got a second set of flutes that go down towards the point that make a square out of the center of the plus sign. So you see the Phillips and the posi drive, they're different. One's just a plain plus sign, and the other one's a plus sign with a square in the middle, and they're not compatible with each other. So anybody who's ever assembled an IKEA unit using a Phillips screwdriver, you've been using posi drive screws, and that's why you keep stripping them and slipping out and what have you. It's worth investing in a posi drive bit, and you can buy them in, this something that fits in one of these screwdrivers. This just happens to be from a different screwdriver. That's the most important thing about screws. Nuts, we have a variety of different nuts here I can show you. Alright, so this is a wing nut. It allows you to spin the nut onto the bolt by hand. It's not intended to be overly tight, but you can spin it on and spin it off. If you wanted to make it tighter, or if it's really stuck and you have trouble, you can actually use a wrench of the appropriate size to increase your leverage to be able to take it off. This is just a conventional nut. Spins onto a bolt and doesn't spin onto that one. It's metric. Alright. So it spins onto this bolt, doesn't have any tightening mechanism, but you can spin it on by hand, take it off by hand. If you have two of these jammed up against each other, they have a locking tendency, which is nice to know. So that's that one. This one is called a nylock nut. It's the most common nut you'll find on wheelchairs, and what it does is it allows you to, if you find something that fits, allows you to spin the nut onto the bolt until it hits this plastic insert. Can you see that yellow there? and that grabs the thread and stops it from turning. So now you need a wrench to be able to spin it on as far as you want it to go, but it grips and doesn't spin off until you put a wrench on to pull it back. So that's the most common style of locking nut that you will come across. This is another style of locking nut. These bits are pressed in initially, so when you spin your bolt through the nut, it's the distortion causes pressure on the thread and stops it from spinning off. There's also a crush. I think it's called a crush. Not really sure what it's called. I thought I had one. It's just after it's installed, it's squeezed really hard, and is this it? No. And it distorts so that instead of a circular hole, it's got an oval hole. It stays on, but when you bring it off again, it distorts back to round more or less, and it loses its effectiveness very quickly. This is just a cosmetic finish, so that the end is nicely finished instead of open. You see compatibility is an issue with a lot of these things. None of these fit. Doesn't matter. Get the idea. And then this has got a built-in washer to not only spread the load out over a bigger surface area, but also the washer is kind of got a pattern on the inside. That's to help with the locking mechanism. It kind of bites into the material that it's pressing against. Bolts. There's Imperial Bolts, which are the type that are used in North America, and they all have, well, not all of them, but there's different markings on the heads of these bolts, and they tell you something about them. If this happens to be an Imperial size, which it is, it's got a non-standard marking, but the fact that it's non-standard tells you something. So this one has got like a Mercedes symbol. It's got 3 radiating lines from the center. This one's got 6 radiating lines. Forget the triangle, that's just something that this particular manufacturer put on. 6 radiating lines and 3 radiating lines. This is a grade 5 bolt, this is a grade 8 bolt, and the grade 8 is stronger than a grade 5. Now if it doesn't have any markings on at all, it's not been heat treated, so it's weaker than this one. So these are the most common types of bolts you'll find on wheelchairs. What's important is that if the manufacturer's put one of these in a certain location, he didn't do it because he ran out of these. He did it because the strength that this provides was necessary in that location. So if you need to replace this for whatever reason, you cross-threaded something or you've damaged it, you need a longer version, you cannot replace it with one of these. You have to put the equivalent strength bolt in. The ones with no marking either could be weak, or they could be stainless steel or titanium. So I've got a magnet here, and stainless steel isn't magnetic. Steel is. So all these things, that's stainless steel. All these things are steel. Oh, I forgot to mention about the T-nut. T-nut you might find in custom seating or on a seat rigidizer, where you have to bolt something into wood. And what you do with a T-nut is, if this is your piece of wood, drill a hole through that's the same diameter as the shaft of the T-nut, pass that through, and these little spikes dig into the wood and stop it from turning. And then you put your bolt in from this side of the wood to secure something to the wood. Okay, the other fasteners that you may come across, washers, go between the nut and the thing that you're fastening it to protect the material, oftentimes the frame of the wheelchair. So if this is a wheelchair, it might go in there. Also increases the size of the contact area. If you're going to be using a locking washer, which this one is spring locking washer, you don't find this very often on wheelchairs. It might be on parts of the seating, especially if it's done afterwards. You put that away from the material of the wheelchair, then put a washer on to protect the frame of the wheelchair, and then tighten that up, and that will stop the nut from loosening off. Again, you don't find these crown washers very often on wheelchairs. This is slightly corrugated, so when you fasten this on, it digs into the material that it's going onto, the frame of the wheelchair, and bites. So as I say, you won't see very many of those. And then this is just a finishing washer, so that it kind of looks nice when it's usually used in holding upholstery on. Alright, other tools that you'll need: tape measure. Doesn't have to be a big honking one like this. You only really need a maximum of 4 foot tape measure. I know they don't come in 4 foot sizes, but 6 foot tape measure is good. It's kind of nice if it'll hold its rigidity when it's out about that far. So when you're measuring width between wheels, it's easy to do. You don't have to hold both ends. An inclinometer of some kind. You can use your cell phone for that. You're just using the Spirit Level app that you can download for free. Tire irons. I like to have 3. 2's not really enough. And it's funny because I use tire irons as little as possible. If possible, I'd rather use my hands to protect the tube. Tire pressure gauge and a high pressure pump. And occasionally you might need a persuader, but you've got to be very lenient with your use of hammer. Alright, I think that's it.